warm cheese bread, the hospitality of Minas Gerais, the Praça da Liberdade, lit up at night, or the mild climate that embraces the city between mountains. In many tourist advertisements, Belo Horizonte appears as a welcoming metropolis, known for its good cuisine, bars, and, of course, the strong rivalry between the teams Atletico and Cruzeiro, the giants of Minas Gerais soccer. But, as you've already seen from our other content here at Bello Mundo, we really like to explore beyond the postcards. In today's Bello Mundo, we landed in Belo Horizonte to show you a different side of the capital of Minas Gerais, a side hidden in the shadows that many people don't even know exists, and that will never appear in the tourist brochure. Number 1. The Belo Horizonte that everyone knows. Belo Horizonte is one of those cities that was born with clear plans. Ever since it was founded in 1897, Belo Horizonte was designed to be a model capital, organized, beautiful, and modern. You can see this in the wide streets, the clear layout, inspired by European cities, and the green areas that make everyday life more pleasant. It's no coincidence that neighborhoods like Lourdes, Funcionarios, and Savassi are full of charm. There are cool cafes, famous restaurants, prestigious schools, and tree-lined streets, all very well looked after. Belo Horizonte also has the reputation of being one of the best Brazilian capitals to live in, with good hospitals, renowned universities, and a vibrant cultural life. It's hard not to be enchanted by places like Praça de Liberdade and Lagoa da Pampulha, which are always bustling with events, exhibitions, and concerts. And this is exactly the Belo Horizonte that most people know. But like any big city, Belo Horizonte also has a less visible side, which is more difficult and full of challenges. And it's exactly this other side, much less talked about, that we're going to explore now. Number 2. Inequality and the growth of poverty. Despite the development indices and sophisticated neighborhoods, the reality of Belo Horizonte is marked by great social inequality. While in the center and the south zone, you'll find luxury condominiums and well-kept areas, other parts of the city suffer from a lack of basic infrastructure. Since its early years, the city has seen its population grow beyond what was planned. The workers who helped build the new capital couldn't afford to live in the central areas and were pushed to the outskirts. This expansion without proper planning resulted in the formation of favelas and clandestine allotments, where public services, such as water, sewage, and lighting, are precarious. Today, surveys show that Belo Horizonte has more than 218 favelas, home to thousands of families who survive on extremely low incomes. Some studies even point out that many residents of these areas have to get by on as little as $20 a month. The divide is not just geographical, but social and economic. While the elite enjoy the comfort of the South Zone, a large part of the vulnerable population is concentrated in regions such as the North, Northwest, and Barreiro. We'll talk more about this in a moment. This creates a stark contrast. Luxurious condominiums and mansions practically side by side with makeshift dwellings, revealing a social abyss that is shocking to anyone who knows the city up close. And this inequality doesn't stop there. It directly affects urban mobility, increases rates of violence, and profoundly damages the quality of life of people in the capital's most deprived areas. Number 3. The rising cost of living. Now imagine living in a city where every year the price of everything, from rent to transportation, from food to electricity, rises faster than the national average. This is the current scenario in Belo Horizonte. Just to give you an idea, data from the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics indicates that, in the last year, accumulated inflation in Greater Belo Horizonte exceeded 5%, well above the 3.93% registered in the country. And what does this mean in practice? Well, it means that everything gets more expensive month after month. In January this year, for example, taking the bus became almost 16% more expensive overnight. Basic bills such as water, electricity, and gas have also increased, forcing many people to review their entire family's spending. What about rent? Platforms show that renting a small apartment in the central region can consume practically the entire salary of those earning the minimum wage. Not even leisure time is exempt. That dinner that used to cost $20 now easily exceeds $30. When money gets tight, there's no way out. People cut back on essential spending, stop going out, or even start looking for cheaper places to live. Number 4. Slums. By now, you've realized that Belo Horizonte isn't just that beautiful city on the postcards, right? Well, the capital of Minas Gerais has two very different realities living side by side. While noble neighborhoods boast luxury buildings and well-kept streets, in several other corners of the city there are communities that lack the basics, such as sanitation, lighting, and security. You don't even have to go that far. Some favelas are very close to these wealthy areas, springing up on slopes and hillsides around the center. As we said earlier, over the decades, the city has pushed the poorer population to the outskirts. With economic growth and rising square meter prices, those who couldn't afford it ended up migrating away. This gave rise to communities that are practically cities within the city. Cabana do Pai Tomás, Conjunto Taquaril, Alto Vera Cruz, Aglomerado da Serra, and Morro do Papagaio are just a few examples. The irony is that Belo Horizonte was born to be a planned, perfect city. But since its foundation, many of the workers who helped build the city have been pushed to the margins, creating makeshift occupations that have grown out of control. Between the 40s and 60s, Belo Horizonte received thousands of people from the interior of Minas Gerais and other states in search of work. Unable to live in the central areas, they ended up occupying the outskirts, building their homes as they could. And that's how these large communities came to be. Today, despite the difficulties, many of these regions have incredible initiatives, such as social projects, community associations, and entrepreneurial actions. But serious problems such as poor sanitation, violence, and lack of infrastructure are still part of the routine in these communities, showing that the perfect city is still far from being a reality for many people. But apart from the communities, do you know another issue that hardly anyone mentions when it comes to Belo Horizonte? Homeless people. Number 5. Homeless people. If you've ever arrived in Belo Horizonte via the central bus station, you may have gotten a shock of reality. The bus station area is a busy place with buses coming and going to every corner of the country. But you only have to take a walk around the nearby streets to see that the situation is not so pretty. The scene there is marked by dozens of homeless people living in a vulnerable situation, and those who pass through the area often feel a sense of abandonment and insecurity. Dirty sidewalks, deteriorated squares and walkways, and a space that should be welcoming has become the exact opposite, a visible and growing problem. Just so you understand the scale of this, in the last 10 years, the number of people living on the streets of Belo Horizonte has increased by almost 200%. According to a recent survey carried out by the Federal University of Minas Gerais, UFMG, the capital of Minas Gerais already has more than 5,000 homeless people, a figure that could be even higher, rising above 10,000 according to the Unified Registry. But this problem isn't limited to the center or the area around the current bus station. It's much wider and affects several other areas of the capital. And speaking of which, have you heard the story of the new bus station? Number 6. Abandonment of works. Overpriced and then abandoned projects happen everywhere. In your city, there are probably some, and Belo Horizonte has several. And perhaps one of the most expensive, costly, and bizarre is the new bus station project. More than a decade ago, the city government announced an ambitious project to build a new bus station in the San Gabriel neighborhood in the northeast of the city. The idea was great, to relieve the chaotic traffic in the center and bring development to other areas. But the project never got off the ground, leaving behind a huge plot of land that has become a dumping ground for rubble and a hotspot for insecurity. Just imagine, more than $5 million were spent on expropriation. 288 families lost their homes in complicated negotiations, and now, in place of the homes, all that remains is a large, dark, and dangerous void. Those who live in the area say that the place is now the scene of drug trafficking, prostitution, and other illegal activities. Initially, the project included a parking lot for 400 cars, a mini shopping center, and around 40 modern boarding and disembarking platforms. But it was all just a dream. With the change of mayors and the lack of proper planning, the project never went ahead. To make matters worse, the current mayor has no new plans for the site. Those who pass by every day sum up the feeling well. It would have been better to leave the families there. Now you walk down the street and you don't know who is who. You don't know what could happen. And while we're on the subject of lack of security, you can't talk about the dark side of a city without touching on another sensitive point: crime. Number 7. Violence and crime. Frightening data. It's not just today that Belo Horizonte faces a heavy security challenge. To give you an idea, in 2024, Belo Horizonte appeared in the 47th position in the world ranking of the most dangerous cities according to the Numbeo platform. And even though it doesn't lead the ranking in Brazil, crime here is considered high. Anyone who lives in or has passed through the capital of Minas Gerais has certainly felt it, especially after dark. Reports of people being afraid to walk alone at night in less busy places are not uncommon. Cases of muggings, carjackings, and dragnets are already part of the city's routine, especially in areas close to the center or in neighborhoods further away from the noble areas. And the figures confirm this feeling. Between 2023 and 2024 alone, homicides increased by around 25%, the biggest increase recorded in more than a decade. But behind the statistics, there is an even harsher reality that few see. Entire communities live in areas dominated by faction disputes, heavy trafficking, and even armed groups that take on the role of the state. It is precisely this brutal inequality that turns Belo Horizonte into a city of contrasts, where the tranquility of some coexists daily with the fear of others. You've probably heard stories or know someone who's been through situations like this, haven't you? But do you know what other form of violence scares people in Belo Horizonte? Organized fans. Number 8. The Fans' War. Belo Horizonte is also a land of soccer. If you ask any resident about the Atlético Mineiro or Cruzeiro team, you'll hear passionate stories, healthy teasing, and endless debates about who has more important titles. So far, so good. Rivalry is part of sport. The problem is when this rivalry goes beyond the stands and turns into fisticuffs in the middle of the street. In recent years, especially in 2023 and 2024, there has been no shortage of news of violent fights involving organized fans. One of the most recent episodes took place in February of 2025, before the derby in Mineirão for the state championship. The unfortunate episode brought together more than 100 fans in the middle of the street, with the use of iron bars, homemade bombs, and even firecrackers. 2 Atletico fans were seriously injured, one of them with serious head injuries. Obviously and unfortunately, this event was not and will not be the last. All you have to do is open up any social network and you'll quickly find videos of clashes and heavy-handed provocations between the organizations, especially on derby days. And then the question arises that everyone has asked themselves, couldn't the police prevent these cases better? Or couldn't the clubs unite more effectively to prevent these situations from happening again? While these answers don't appear, it's the families and ordinary fans who suffer, often afraid even to wear their team's jersey or take their children to matches for fear of these disturbances. It's a very dark and worrying side of soccer, which definitely doesn't match the beauty of the celebrations in the stadiums. Have you witnessed or do you know of any cases like this? Tell us about it in the comments. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss out on any curiosities here at Bello Mundo. Number 9. The ancient tradition of prostitution. It's not just soccer that leaves its mark on Belo Horizonte's history. There's another chapter in the city's history that goes almost unnoticed by those looking in from the outside: the ancient and very complex tradition of prostitution. If you've ever heard of Rua Guaicurus, you probably know that it's considered the biggest prostitution hotspot, not only in Belo Horizonte, but also one of the biggest in the country. The curious thing is that this relationship between the capital of Minas Gerais and prostitution is not new. It dates back to the early 20th century, when the city was still establishing itself as a commercial and industrial hub, gaining cabarets and nightclubs where dancers and call girls sought clients. In the first decades after 1897, when Belo Horizonte was founded, there was already the idea of confining prostitution to specific areas so as not to tarnish the city's image. Luxurious cabarets such as the Palacio and Radio operated near the current railway station and bus station under the control of pimps who did everything they could to keep the women in line. The police registered these workers and even forbade them from appearing in the windows in an attempt to hide this necessary evil from the eyes of the elite. Even so, a lot happened there, including the negotiation of political favors. Between 1930 and 1970, the Lagoinha and Bonfim neighborhoods became synonymous with Bohemia, with bars, cinemas, and concert halls that welcomed all kinds of audiences. It was also when reports of male and transvestite prostitution began to emerge, such as the legendary Cintura Fina, a controversial figure who imposed respect and fear using a razor. During this period, prostitution spread to the busiest spots, mixing with samba and nightlife. But it was from the 70s until today that things really diversified. Rua Guaicurus has kept the famous battle hotels, where dozens of women, trans, and even people from abroad circulate in the cramped corridors, paying daily fees to serve clients all day. Many think that the professionals are always the same, but there is a great diversity of profiles, ages, and stories. In common, almost all of them face prejudice, violence, and a game of exploitation that often involves the owner of the establishment taking a large part of the money. In addition, the police often carry out operations to investigate possible cases of private imprisonment or pimping. There are often reports of women who can't scrape together enough money to return to their hometown, trapped by debts or schemes to withhold part of the cost of the programs. In February of 2025, for example, a 55-year-old woman was arrested for allegedly sexually exploiting 2 women from Amazonas. Although prostitution itself is not a crime in Brazil, retaining 60% of the value of the programs and keeping the victims in degrading conditions without adequate food or accommodation constitutes exploitation. They also reported the difficulty of returning home, since almost all the money they earned went to the owner of the establishment. There is also no shortage of cases of clients refusing to pay, assaults inside the rooms, or even rapes that almost never reach the police station out of sheer fear of reprisals. In the midst of this scenario, some organizations are trying to change things, fighting for the recognition and dignity of sex work, but the road is too difficult. At the end of the day, Rua Guaicurus, like other prostitution hotspots in Belo Horizonte, sums up the contradictions of a city that was born planned, but has always left out those who don't fit the modern capital model. It's another piece of this dark side that coexists daily with the more beautiful and privileged Belo Horizonte, 2 sides of the same reality. And now, we want to hear from you. What surprised you most about the reality of Belo Horizonte? Leave your comment below and share this video with anyone who also likes content that goes beyond the obvious. And if you enjoyed this journey, stay tuned, because there's still a lot to explore about what happens in Brazil and the rest of the world when the tourist cameras turn off. Thank you very much for following us, and we'll see you in the next video with more stories that nobody tells you. See you next time.